The red neon sign of Dolly's Diner flickered irregularly on Nashville's Broadway, its light reflecting off the puddles forming on the rain-soaked sidewalk. It was one of those Tuesday nights when the downpour kept both tourists and locals away, leaving the restaurant nearly empty. Sarah Mitchell, 24, wiped down the same counter for the third time, her tired eyes revealing the long hours of double shifts she'd been pulling to pay for her mother's medical bills. Another slow night, she murmured to herself, adjusting the faded apron she'd worn for 2 years. Dolly's Diner wasn't the fanciest place in town, but it paid enough to keep Sarah and her mother, Margaret, afloat in their small apartment on the outskirts of Nashville. The bell above the door chimed softly as a man in his late 50s entered, shaking the rain from an old baseball cap. He wore simple jeans, a worn flannel shirt, and work boots that had seen better days. His beard was slightly unkempt, and he moved with the careful gait of someone trying not to draw attention to himself. "Evening," Sarah called out with a warm smile that had charmed countless customers over the years. "Pretty nasty weather out there. Come on in and get dry." The man chose a corner booth, away from the windows, and settled in with a weary sigh. Sarah approached with a menu and a steaming cup of coffee. "Thank you, darlin'," he said softly, his voice carrying a gentle southern drawl. "This coffee smells like heaven." "It's our house blend," Sarah replied, setting down the cup. "Been the same recipe for 30 years, or so the owner claims. What can I get you tonight?" The man studied the menu for a long moment, and Sarah noticed him checking his wallet discreetly. She'd seen that gesture countless times, people counting their money, making difficult choices between hunger and necessity. "Just the coffee for now," he said, looking up with kind but tired eyes. "Maybe some of those biscuits, if they're not too dear." "Honey, our biscuits are made fresh this afternoon, and they're just $3 for a basket," Sarah said, though she could see the internal calculation he was making. "Tell you what, why don't I bring you a sample while you decide? No charge for that." The man's eyes lit up with genuine gratitude. "That's mighty kind of you, miss." Sarah Mitchell. And it's no trouble at all." As Sarah walked back to the kitchen, she couldn't shake the feeling that this customer was different. There was something in his demeanor, a humility mixed with dignity, as if he'd known better times but wasn't bitter about his current circumstances. She'd learned to read people during her years of waitressing, and this man struck her as someone who'd give his last dollar to help a stranger. She returned with a basket of warm biscuits and a small dish of honey butter. "These are yesterday's batch," she lied smoothly. "We were just going to throw them away anyway." The man took a bite and closed his eyes, savoring the taste. "These are incredible. Your cook's got real talent." "Actually, I make them myself," Sarah said, feeling a flush of pride. "Started helping in the kitchen when we got short-staffed, and turns out I have a knack for baking." "You surely do." "These remind me of my grandmother's. She used to make them every Sunday after church." His voice carried a note of nostalgia that made Sarah's heart ache slightly. They talked for nearly an hour, the conversation flowing easily between them. He asked about her life in Nashville, her dreams, and her family. Sarah found herself opening up to this gentle stranger, telling him about her mother's illness, her hopes of maybe opening her own bakery someday, and how she loved the music scene in Nashville even though she couldn't afford to attend many shows. "Music's in the soul of this city," the man said thoughtfully. "It doesn't matter if you're in the Grand Ole Opry or humming along to the radio in your car. Nashville makes everyone feel like they're part of something bigger." "Exactly," Sarah agreed enthusiastically. "I grew up listening to country music with my mom. She used to say that every song tells a story, and every story matters." When the man finally looked at his watch, it was nearly closing time. "I should be heading out," he said, reaching for his wallet again. "What do I owe you for the coffee and biscuits?" Sarah had made her decision an hour ago. "You know what? It's been such a slow night, and you've been the best company I've had all week. How about you just take care of the tip?" "Ma'am, I can't let you do that," he protested. But Sarah was already clearing his table with determination. "My restaurant, my rules tonight," she said with a wink. "Besides, you remind me of my dad. He passed away 3 years ago, but he had the same kind heart you do. He would have done the same thing for someone else." The man stood up slowly, clearly moved by her gesture. "Sarah Mitchell, you have restored my faith in human kindness tonight. I won't forget this." As he walked toward the door, Sarah impulsively grabbed a small paper bag and filled it with the remaining fresh biscuits. "For the road," she called out, catching up to him at the door. He accepted the bag with hands that trembled slightly. "Bless your heart, young lady. I hope life gives you everything you deserve, and more." "Same to you," Sarah replied, watching as he pulled his cap low and stepped back into the rain. What Sarah didn't notice as she locked up the restaurant was the black sedan parked across the street, or the fact that her act of kindness had been captured by the diner's security cameras. Cameras that her manager, Marcus Thompson, checked religiously every morning. As Sarah drove home through the empty streets of Nashville, she thought about the stranger and hoped he'd found somewhere warm and dry to spend the night. She had no idea that the man walking through the rain was Garth Brooks, one of country music's biggest legends, who had been wandering the streets of Nashville in disguise, searching for authentic human connection and inspiration for his next album. And she certainly had no idea that her simple act of kindness was about to change both their lives forever. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, a stark contrast to the previous night's storm. Sarah arrived at Dolly's Diner 30 minutes early, as was her habit, to help with the morning prep. The breakfast crowd would start trickling in soon, and she wanted to make sure everything was perfect. Marcus Thompson was already there, his thin frame hunched over his laptop at the manager's desk in the back office. At 42, Marcus ruled the diner with an iron fist and a perpetual scowl. He'd been managing restaurants for 15 years and prided himself on running a tight ship, though his staff often whispered that he'd forgotten what customer service actually meant. "Sarah!" His voice called out sharply before she could even tie her apron. "I need to see you in my office. Now." Sarah's stomach dropped. She'd learned to recognize that tone. It never meant good news. She made her way to the cramped office, where Marcus was turning his laptop screen toward her. "Care to explain this?" he asked coldly, pointing to a frozen frame from the security camera footage. The image clearly showed Sarah at the register, followed by her putting money from her own wallet into the till. Sarah's heart began to race. "Marcus, I can explain." "You paid for a customer's meal out of your own pocket," he interrupted, his voice rising. "Do you have any idea how many health code violations, company policy violations, and just plain stupid decisions that represents?" He was a nice man who was clearly struggling, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "It was just coffee and some biscuits. I didn't think—" "That's right, you didn't think." Marcus slammed his hand on the desk. "We have policies for a reason, Sarah. What if he was running a scam? What if he comes back expecting free food? What if every sob story that walks through that door thinks they can get a free meal because Sarah Mitchell feels sorry for them?" "It wasn't like that," Sarah protested. "He was genuine, and it was my money. I wasn't stealing from the restaurant. You gave away food without authorization. You violated cash handling procedures. And worst of all, you made this restaurant look like a charity case to anyone who might have been watching." Marcus's face was flushed with anger. I've been looking for a reason to clean house around here, and congratulations! You just gave me one." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "Marcus, please, I need this job. My mother should have thought about that before you decided to play Lady Bountiful with company resources." He opened his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. "Your final check is in here. Clean out your locker and turn in your uniform. Security will escort you out." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "Security? Marcus, I've worked here for 2 years without a single complaint. My customer reviews are excellent. You're firing me for one act of kindness? I'm firing you for violating company policy and showing poor judgment," Marcus said, standing up to signal the conversation was over. "The decision is final." 20 minutes later, Sarah found herself standing on the sidewalk outside Dolly's diner, holding a cardboard box with her personal belongings. The morning rush was just beginning, and she watched through the window as her former co-workers scrambled to cover her tables. Jenny Martinez, her closest friend at the diner, caught her eye through the glass and mouthed, "I'm sorry," her face full of sympathy and outrage. Sarah's hands shook as she pulled out her phone to call her mother. Margaret Mitchell had been battling diabetes and heart disease for 3 years, and Sarah's steady income from the diner had been their lifeline for medical expenses and daily living costs. "Mom!" Sarah's voice cracked as Margaret answered on the second ring. "Sarah? Honey, you sound upset. What's wrong?" Sarah took a deep breath, trying to find the words. "I lost my job, Mom. I got fired this morning." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Margaret finally spoke, her voice was gentle but worried. "Oh, sweetheart, what happened?" Sarah explained the entire situation, from the kind stranger the night before to Marcus's harsh reaction. As she talked, she found herself getting angry all over again, not just at Marcus, but at a system that punished compassion and rewarded cold corporate thinking. "You did the right thing, baby," Margaret said firmly when Sarah finished her story. "Your father raised you to help people when you can, and I'm proud of you for following your heart. But Mom, what are we going to do? Rent is due next week, and your medications—" "We'll figure it out," Margaret interrupted. "We always do. You start looking for another job today, and I'll see what kind of assistance programs might be available. We're not giving up." After hanging up, Sarah sat in her car for a long moment, watching the busy street life of Nashville flow around her. Music City had always represented hope and dreams to her, but right now, it felt overwhelming and indifferent. She thought about the man from the night before and wondered if he was having a better morning than she was. What Sarah didn't know was that several blocks away, Garth Brooks was sitting in his home studio, strumming his guitar and thinking about the young waitress who had shown him such unexpected kindness. He'd been struggling with writer's block for weeks, but something about the previous evening had unlocked a wellspring of inspiration. He'd spent years in the spotlight, surrounded by people who wanted something from him, but Sarah Mitchell had simply seen a fellow human being who needed a moment of grace. Her generosity had been pure and uncomplicated, asking for nothing in return. Garth was working on a new song, tentatively titled "Angels in Aprons," when his assistant, Patricia Wells, knocked on the studio door. "Garth, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something you might want to see," Patricia said, holding up her tablet. "It's a local news story that just went viral on social media." The headline read, "Nashville waitress fired for paying customer's bill." Below it was a photo of Sarah walking out of Dolly's diner with her cardboard box, taken by a customer who had witnessed the scene and posted it online. Garth's blood ran cold as he read the article. Jenny Martinez, Sarah's co-worker, had contacted the local news station after witnessing the termination. She'd told them about Sarah's character, her dedication to her sick mother, and how she regularly went above and beyond for customers. The story had struck a chord with readers, and comments were pouring in expressing outrage at the restaurant's decision. "That's her," Garth said quietly, staring at Sarah's photo. "That's the angel who helped me last night." Patricia looked confused. "You know this girl." "She's the reason I was able to write again," Garth said, setting down his guitar. "Patricia, I need you to find out everything you can about Sarah Mitchell, quietly and respectfully. I have a feeling we're going to want to help her." As Patricia left to make some phone calls, Garth returned to his guitar. But now he was writing a different song. This one was about injustice, about good people getting punished for their goodness, and about how sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to make sure the right thing gets done. He had no idea that within hours, Sarah Mitchell's story would become a rallying cry for thousands of people across Nashville and beyond, or that his decision to help her would spark a movement that would transform not just their lives, but the entire community. By Thursday afternoon, Sarah's story had exploded across social media platforms nationwide. The hashtag Chaudhry's Justice for Sarah was trending on Twitter, and the local news story had been picked up by major networks. Sarah's phone hadn't stopped ringing with calls from reporters, job offers, and complete strangers wanting to express their support. Meanwhile, Dolly's Diner was experiencing a very different kind of attention. Protesters had gathered outside the restaurant with signs reading, "Kindness isn't a crime," and "Fire the manager, hire the heart." The restaurant's online reviews had plummeted overnight, with hundreds of one-star ratings and angry comments about their treatment of Sarah. Marcus Thompson was pacing frantically in his office, fielding increasingly angry calls from corporate headquarters. The restaurant chain's stock price had actually dipped slightly due to the negative publicity, and executives were demanding answers. "This is a disaster," Marcus muttered to himself, staring out at the crowd of protesters. He'd never imagined that firing one waitress could create such a firestorm. Jenny Martinez knocked on his door. "Marcus, Channel 5 News is here. They want a statement about Sarah's termination." "Tell them no comment," Marcus snapped. "And tell those protesters to move along or I'll call the police." "Actually," Jenny said carefully, "I think you should know that some pretty important people are asking questions about this. I heard through the grapevine that some major donors to local charities are talking about boycotting any business that doesn't treat its employees with basic human decency." Marcus's face paled. He was already on thin ice with corporate after several customer complaints about his management style. If this situation cost the company significant revenue, his own job would be on the line. Across town, Sarah was sitting in her small apartment with her mother, trying to process the overwhelming response to her situation. Her phone buzzed with another text message, this one from a cousin in California who had seen the story on Facebook. "Honey, you need to eat something," Margaret said, placing a sandwich in front of her daughter. Despite her own health issues, Margaret had spent the day fielding phone calls and organizing the chaos that had become their life. "I can't believe this is happening, Mom," Sarah said, scrolling through the hundreds of supportive messages on her social media accounts. People from all over the country are sending donations. Someone in Texas started a GoFundMe for us. I don't know what to do with all of this. "You take it one day at a time," Margaret replied wisely. "And you remember that this attention is happening because you did something good. People are responding because they see something in you that they want to celebrate." Sarah's phone rang again, but this time the caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize with a Nashville area code. She almost didn't answer, having grown tired of reporter interviews, but something made her pick up. "Sarah Mitchell?" The voice was professional but warm. "Yes, this is Sarah. My name is Patricia Wells. I work for someone who would like to meet with you, if you're willing. He was very moved by your story and would like to discuss how he might be able to help. Sarah sighed. Look, I appreciate all the support I've been getting, but if this is another reporter or someone wanting to use my situation for publicity, it's not, Patricia interrupted gently. This person specifically wants to help, not exploit. He has a particular interest in your situation because he was personally affected by your kindness. Something in Patricia's tone made Sarah pause. What do you mean, personally affected? I think it would be better if he explained that himself. Would you be willing to meet tomorrow afternoon? Somewhere private and comfortable for you? Sarah looked at her mother, who had been listening to the conversation with growing curiosity. Margaret nodded encouragingly. Okay, Sarah said finally, but I want my mom there with me. Of course, I'll text you the details. After hanging up, Sarah turned to her mother. What do you think that was about? Margaret smiled mysteriously. I have a feeling we're about to find out that your kindness traveled further than you realized. Baby girl. The next afternoon, Sarah and Margaret drove to a quiet coffee shop in Belle Meade, an upscale Nashville neighborhood. Patricia Wells met them at the door, a professional woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and an efficient manner. Thank you for coming, Patricia said, leading them to a private room in the back of the coffee shop. He's waiting for you inside. Sarah pushed open the door and stopped dead in her tracks. Sitting at a small table, wearing the same humble clothes from Tuesday night, but with a much cleaner appearance, was the man she had helped at the diner. Except now she recognized him. Her mother gasped audibly. Oh, my Lord! Hello, Sarah, Garth Brooks said, standing up with a gentle smile. I believe we have some things to talk about. Sarah's legs felt weak. She groped for a chair and sat down heavily. You were the hungry customer you helped Tuesday night, Garth finished. And I want you to know that what you did for me, a complete stranger who you thought was down on his luck, meant more to me than you could possibly imagine. Margaret found her voice first. Mr. Brooks, I've been listening to your music since I was Sarah's age. But I have to ask, what were you doing at Dolly's Diner dressed like, well, like you needed help? Garth chuckled. I've been struggling with writer's block for months. My manager suggested I get out and experience real life again. Connect with ordinary people without the barrier of fame. So I've been walking around Nashville in disguise, just trying to feel human again. He turned to Sarah, his expression growing serious. But what I found that night was something extraordinary. You didn't help me because you recognized me, or because you wanted something from me. You helped because you saw someone who needed kindness, and you gave it freely, even when it cost you something. It cost me my job, Sarah said quietly, which is exactly why I wanted to meet with you, Garth replied. Sarah, I've learned what happened to you, and I want to make it right. But more than that, I want to do something that honors the spirit of what you did for me. He leaned forward, his eyes intense with purpose. I want to offer you a job, not charity. A real job with real responsibilities. I'm opening a new venue here in Nashville, a place that combines live music with Southern cooking. I need someone to oversee the kitchen operations, someone who understands both food and hospitality. Sarah stared at him in shock. Mr. Brooks, I'm just a waitress. I don't have experience running a kitchen. You have something better than experience, Garth said. You have heart. And based on those biscuits you made, you have talent too. Everything else can be taught. Margaret reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. Tell him about your dream, honey. Sarah blushed. It's nothing, just I've always dreamed of opening my own bakery someday. I love baking, and I love feeding people, making them happy. Garth's smile widened. What if I told you that this new venue could include a bakery component? What if your dream could be part of something bigger? As the conversation continued, Sarah began to understand that this wasn't just about her anymore. Garth had been inspired by her story to create something that would celebrate the kind of everyday kindness that was becoming rare in the world. The venue would be a place where good people were honored, where community mattered, and where second chances were the rule rather than the exception. There's one more thing, Garth said as their meeting began to wind down. I want you to know that your story has already changed things. Dolly's Diner corporate called me this morning. They're implementing new employee appreciation policies, and they're making a substantial donation to a fund for service workers who go above and beyond for their customers. And Marcus Thompson? Sarah asked, surprised to find that she felt more curious than vindictive. He's been reassigned to corporate training, where he'll be developing programs to help managers understand the value of employee empathy, Garth said with a slight grin. Sometimes people need to learn the hard way that treating people badly has consequences. As Sarah and her mother drove home, both of them were quiet, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. Finally, Margaret spoke up. You know, honey, your father always said that when you put good into the world, it finds a way to come back to you. I don't think he could have imagined it would come back quite this dramatically, though. Sarah laughed, feeling lighter than she had in days. Mom, I'm scared. This is so much bigger than anything I ever imagined for myself. Good, Margaret said firmly. The best things in life should scare you a little bit. It means they matter. 3 months later, the construction site on Music Row was buzzing with activity. Sarah stood in what would soon be the kitchen of Harmony Haven, wearing a hard hat and holding blueprints that she was learning to read with the help of the contractor, Robert Chen, a patient man who had worked on several Nashville music venues. The bakery section will have 3 commercial ovens, Robert explained, pointing to the architectural drawings. And see this area here? That's where we're installing the display case for your fresh goods. Sarah nodded, still amazed that she was discussing commercial kitchen design instead of waiting tables. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of learning. Business classes, food safety certification, and working alongside experienced chefs that Garth had brought in to mentor her. Sarah! The familiar voice belonged to Maria Santos, a Nashville chef who had become Sarah's primary mentor. Maria was a James Beard Award winner who had left her prestigious restaurant to help Sarah develop the menu for Harmony Haven. The bread samples are ready for Garth to try. Sarah followed Maria to the temporary kitchen they'd set up in a nearby building. The space smelled like heaven. Fresh bread, cinnamon, and the rich aroma of coffee that would soon be served at the venue. I'm nervous, Sarah admitted as they arranged the samples on a tray. What if he doesn't like them? Honey, I've been cooking for 20 years, Maria said with a warm smile. Trust me when I tell you that your instincts with flavors are extraordinary. That honey wheat bread you created? It's going to be signature dish. Garth arrived right on schedule, accompanied by Alan Jackson, who had become an enthusiastic supporter of the Harmony Haven project. The 2 music legends looked like any other Nashville locals in their jeans and baseball caps, but Sarah was still getting used to having casual conversations with people she'd grown up idolizing. Sarah! Garth called out, giving her a quick hug. How are you feeling about the progress? Excited and terrified, Sarah admitted, but mostly excited. That's the perfect combination for someone about to open their own business, Alan said with a grin. Now, where's this bread we've been hearing about? Sarah presented her samples: honey wheat dinner rolls, cornbread with jalapenos and cheese, and her grandmother's biscuit recipe that she'd modified with locally sourced buttermilk. She watched nervously as both men tasted each item, their expressions carefully neutral. Finally, Garth looked up with a huge smile. Sarah, This is exactly what Nashville has been missing. This isn't just food. It's comfort. It's home. It's everything good about Southern hospitality. Alan nodded enthusiastically. That cornbread is going to sell out every night. I guarantee it. As they continued testing recipes and discussing the venue's concept, Sarah felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over her. Not just for the opportunity, but for the community that had formed around Harmony Haven. Patricia Wells had become like an older sister, helping Sarah navigate the business aspects of the venture. Jenny Martinez had quit Dolly's Diner to become Harmony Haven's assistant manager. Even some of the protesters who had supported Sarah outside the diner had become regular volunteers, helping with everything from painting to menu planning. "I have some news," Garth announced as they finished the tasting session. "The Grand Ole Opry wants to do a segment about Harmony Haven for their radio show. They're calling it Music City's Heart, and they want to feature stories about people in Nashville who are making a difference in their community." Sarah's eyes widened. "The Grand Ole Opry? But I'm not a musician." "You don't have to be," Garth replied. "Music isn't just about what happens on stage. It's about the stories we tell, the connections we make, and the way we take care of each other. What you're building here is as much a part of Nashville's music scene as any song I've ever written." After the meeting, Sarah walked through the construction site one more time before heading home. The venue was starting to take shape. Exposed brick walls that would showcase local artwork, a stage area for acoustic performances, and the heart of it all, her kitchen and bakery. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. How did the tasting go? Dad's favorite cornbread recipe for dinner tonight to celebrate? Sarah smiled and typed back, "Perfect timing. And Mom? I think Dad would be proud." That evening, as Sarah and Margaret sat in their small apartment sharing cornbread and talking about the day, Margaret pulled out a worn envelope from her purse. "I wanted to wait for the right moment to show you this," she said, handing the envelope to Sarah. It came yesterday. Sarah recognized the return address, Dolly's Diner Corporate Headquarters. Inside was a formal letter of apology and a check for $10,000, along with an invitation for Sarah to speak at their annual manager training conference about the importance of employee empathy and customer service excellence. "They want to pay me to teach managers not to be like Marcus Thompson," Sarah said, laughing despite herself. "Sometimes the best teachers are people who've experienced the worst examples," Margaret observed. "And you know what? I think you should do it." "Really?" "Really. Not for revenge, but because you might prevent some other good person from going through what you went through." Sarah looked at the check, then at her mother. "This could pay off some of your medical bills. Or," Margaret suggested with a sly smile, "it could be Harmony Haven's first community outreach fund. I heard you and Maria talking about wanting to provide free meals for people who need them." Sarah hugged her mother tightly. "How did I get so lucky to have you as my mom?" "Honey, luck had nothing to do with it. You were raised to be exactly who you are. Someone who sees the best in people and brings out the best in situations. That's not luck. That's character." As Sarah got ready for bed that night, she thought about how much her life had changed since that rainy Tuesday evening. She'd lost a job, but gained a career. She'd faced injustice, but found justice. Most importantly, she'd learned that one small act of kindness could ripple outward in ways she never could have imagined. Tomorrow, she would go back to the construction site and continue building her dream. But tonight, she was simply grateful for the journey that had brought her here, and excited about all the lives that Harmony Haven would touch in the years to come. 6 months later, on a warm October evening, Music Row was alive with excitement. A red carpet led to the entrance of Harmony Haven, where a modest but elegant sign proclaimed, "Where every story matters. The venue's opening night had drawn not just Nashville's music elite, but also the everyday heroes who had supported Sarah's journey. From the diner protesters to the social media supporters who had never stopped following her story. Sarah stood in her kitchen, wearing a chef's jacket embroidered with Executive Chef and Owner below her name. Through the service window, she could see the dining room filling with familiar faces. Jenny Martinez was gracefully seating guests, while Patricia Wells coordinated with the small army of volunteers who had insisted on helping with the opening. "You ready for this?" Maria Santos asked, adjusting her own chef's jacket. She had agreed to work the opening night alongside Sarah, a gesture that meant more than any review or accolade could. "I think so," Sarah replied, taking a deep breath. "It still doesn't feel real." The kitchen door swung open, and Margaret Mitchell entered, moving slowly but proudly with her walker. Her health had stabilized over the past few months, thanks partly to reduced stress and partly to the excellent insurance coverage that came with Sarah's new business partnership with Garth. "My beautiful daughter," Margaret said, tears in her eyes. "Your father is watching tonight, and he is so proud." The three women embraced, a moment of quiet emotion before the controlled chaos of service began. Through the window, Sarah could see Garth at the microphone on the small stage, preparing to address the opening night crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," Garth began, his voice carrying easily through the intimate space. "6 months ago, I walked into a diner on a rainy night, carrying nothing but hope for human connection. What I found was something that reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place: the power of genuine human kindness." The crowd quieted as Garth continued his story, many hearing the full details for the first time. Sarah watched from the kitchen as he gestured toward her, the spotlight finding her through the service window. "Sarah Mitchell didn't help me because she knew who I was. She helped me because she saw someone who needed kindness, and she gave it freely, even when it cost her something." Tonight, we celebrate not just the opening of Harmony Haven, but the principle it represents, that taking care of each other isn't just good business, it's good humanity. The applause was thunderous. Sarah stepped into the dining room, overwhelmed by the support from the crowd that included everyone from Grammy winners to local community leaders to the homeless individuals she'd been quietly serving free meals to during the pre-opening weeks. "I have something to share with you all," Sarah said, her voice stronger than she expected. "When Mr. Brooks first offered to help me, I thought this was just about me getting a second chance. But as we've built Harmony Haven, I've realized it's about something much bigger." She gestured to a wall where photos were displayed. Images of staff members, local musicians, community volunteers, and regular customers. "This is our family wall. Every person whose picture is here has contributed something to making this place special. Because Harmony Haven isn't just a restaurant or a music venue. It's proof that when we take care of each other, beautiful things happen." Alan Jackson took the microphone next. "I've been coming by during construction, sneaking tastes of Sarah's cooking," he said with a grin. "And I can tell you that the food here is made with something you can't teach in culinary school. Love. Real, honest-to-goodness love for the people you're feeding." The formal program concluded with a performance by several Nashville artists, but the real magic of the evening happened during dinner service. Sarah moved between the kitchen and dining room, checking on guests, sharing stories about each dish, and connecting with people in a way that made the large space feel intimate and welcoming. At table 12, she paused to chat with Dr. James Robinson, a local physician who had treated her mother. At table 7, she hugged Mrs. Eleanor Thompson, an elderly woman who had become a regular volunteer during construction and now helped coordinate Harmony Haven's community outreach programs. "Sarah, dear," Mrs. Thompson said, holding her hands tightly, You've created something magical here. This place reminds me why I still believe in the goodness of people. Near the back of the restaurant, Sarah noticed a familiar figure trying to remain inconspicuous. Marcus Thompson sat alone at a small table, looking uncomfortable but determined. When their eyes met, he stood up and walked toward her. "Sarah," he said quietly, his voice lacking the authority it once carried. "I know I have no right to be here, but I wanted to come and apologize properly. What I did was wrong, and I've spent the last 6 months learning why." Sarah studied his face, seeing genuine remorse where once there had been only rigid pride. "How are you doing, Marcus?" "Better," he admitted. "The corporate training position has been humbling. I've been working with employee relations, and I've heard a lot of stories about managers like me. It's opened my eyes to how much damage I was doing." He handed her a small envelope. "This is a donation to your community fund. It's not much, but it's from my own pocket, and it comes with a promise that I'm going to do better." Sarah accepted the envelope with grace. "Thank you, Marcus. That means a lot. I also wanted you to know," he continued, "that your story has become part of our training program. We use it to teach new managers about the importance of employee empathy and community connection. You're helping to change how our entire company treats people." As Marcus returned to his table, Sarah felt a profound sense of completion. This wasn't just about her redemption. It was about everyone involved learning and growing from the experience. The evening continued with impromptu performances from various artists in the crowd. A young singer-songwriter named Emma Phillips, who worked as a barista at a nearby coffee shop, took the stage and performed an original song she'd written about Sarah's story. An elderly jazz musician named Walter Davis sat in on piano, creating magic with whoever wanted to sing. As the night wound down, Sarah found herself standing outside Harmony Haven with Garth, watching the last guests say their goodbyes. The autumn air was crisp, and the neon lights of Music Row cast a warm glow over the street. "So," Garth said, "how does it feel to be a Nashville success story?" Sarah laughed. "Surreal. 6 months ago, I was worried about paying rent. Tonight, I'm standing outside my own restaurant, watching Grammy winners wash dishes in my kitchen because they wanted to help." "That's the thing about genuine kindness," Garth observed. "It creates a ripple effect that keeps going long after the initial act. You helped one stranger on a rainy night, and look what grew from that." "I've been thinking about that," Sarah said. "About the responsibility that comes with this kind of opportunity. People are watching Harmony Haven to see if we'll live up to the story that brought us here. And I think we will, because it's not just about the food or the music or even the success. It's about proving that treating people with dignity and kindness isn't just the right thing to do. It's good business, good community building, and good for the soul." Garth nodded approvingly. "You know, I came to Nashville 30 years ago with big dreams and empty pockets. I've been blessed beyond measure, but tonight reminded me what success really looks like. It's not about the awards or the album sales. It's about the connections you make and the lives you touch." 3 months after opening, Harmony Haven had become more than a restaurant. It had become a Nashville institution. The venue hosted regular Community Hero Nights, where local volunteers and everyday heroes were celebrated. Sarah's Bakery had expanded to include a program that provided free breakfast pastries to local schools in low-income neighborhoods. The success had brought offers from investors wanting to franchise the concept, television producers pitching reality shows, and publishers wanting Sarah to write a cookbook. But Sarah had turned them all down, choosing instead to focus on perfecting what she had and deepening its impact on the community. "I don't want to be famous," she explained to Patricia Wells during one of their weekly business meetings. "I want to be useful." The comment had made its way to Garth, who shared it during an interview on the Grand Ole Opry radio show. "Sarah Mitchell just summed up everything that's right about Nashville," he'd said. "In a world full of people chasing fame, she's chasing purpose." On a quiet Tuesday evening in January, almost a year after that first encounter at Dolly's Diner, Sarah was in her kitchen preparing for the next day's service when she heard familiar voices in the dining room. Through the service window, she saw Garth sitting at the same corner table where he preferred to eat when he came by. But tonight, he wasn't alone. With him were two young musicians, a brother and sister duo from small-town Tennessee who had just arrived in Nashville with their guitars and big dreams. Sarah recognized the look in their eyes, the mixture of hope and fear that came with betting everything on a dream. She watched as Garth quietly paid for their meal, just as she had paid for his almost a year ago. But more than that, she watched him listen to their stories, offer encouragement, and promise to make some phone calls that might help them get their start in the music business. Sarah smiled and returned to her prep work, understanding that the circle was now complete. Kindness had created opportunity, opportunity had created community, and community was creating more kindness. The ripples that had started on a rainy night in October had become waves that were lifting up everyone they touched. Late that night, as Sarah locked up Harmony Haven and walked to her car, she paused to look at the small plaque that hung beside the front door. It was a quote from her father that Margaret had suggested: "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." Below it, in smaller letters, was the date of Harmony Haven's opening and a simple inscription: "In memory of Robert Mitchell, who taught his daughter that kindness is never wasted." As Sarah drove home through the quiet streets of Nashville, she thought about how much her life had changed and how much it had stayed the same. She was still the same person who had seen a hungry stranger and wanted to help. The only difference was that now she had the platform and resources to help on a much larger scale. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Saw the news story about the scholarship fund. Your father would be so proud. Love you, sweetheart." Sarah smiled, remembering the announcement she'd made earlier that day. Harmony Haven would be establishing an annual scholarship for young people pursuing careers in hospitality and culinary arts, with preference given to those who demonstrated exceptional kindness and community service. As she pulled into her driveway, a nicer house in a better neighborhood, but still modest by Nashville standards, Sarah reflected on the most important lesson she'd learned over the past year. Success wasn't measured by how high you climbed, but by how many people you brought with you on the journey. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to serve, and new chances to prove that a business built on genuine care for people could thrive in any economic climate. But tonight, Sarah Mitchell, former waitress, current restaurant owner, and always believer in the power of human kindness, was simply grateful for the journey that had brought her here, and excited about all the good that was yet to come. The story that had started with a simple act of kindness on a rainy night had become a testament to the transformative power of treating people with dignity and love. And in a city built on dreams and second chances, Harmony Haven stood as proof that sometimes the most beautiful music comes not from the stage, but from the connections we make with each other, one small act of kindness at a time. In Nashville, where every song tells a story, Sarah Mitchell's story had become a song of hope that continued to play in the hearts of everyone whose life it touched. And like all the best country songs, it was a story about real people, real struggles, and the real magic that happens when we choose to see the best in each other.